I got a kid, so I'm doing okay with the car, and I'm
My name is Kunal. I am driving the MG Gloster. I got this in the middle of January this year. It's got about 3,000 kilometers on it, and that's been my experience with the car so far. It was about 43 and a half. I think it cost me on road in Gurgaon. About 3,100 kilometers I have done. So far I am getting 10 plus, and in city constantly getting over 9.5. On long trips it's comfortably reaching about 12.5 as well. When I take it into sport, about 100-200 kilometers journey, I've noticed the mileage dropping to about 8.5 to 9. So it's not that drastic, but there is definitely a difference in the pickup that you will feel right off the bat. Definitely been better than what I anticipated, because when I bought the car I had a mental number of 8. I was hoping it stays above 8 and I'll be happy, but it's almost been in double digits throughout. So I think again, for this segment, this size and the weight, those are very good numbers. This is basically a dial to switch between the different drive modes that you have. So it basically has what? Eco, Sport, Snow, Mud, Sand and Rock. Most of the time I drive at auto. This is not a button. It looks like a button, but it's not. Neither are these buttons. So they're all this is just marking. I haven't really had the time to notice the difference between each mode, because I've not really gone to those terrains. So it's Sport, and this is Snow, and this is Mud, this is Sand. So you can basically switch on the fly as you're driving between all the modes. Rock mode, you have to kind of stop the car, turn the engine off, turn it into neutral, and then it changes, because I think there's some differential lock settings that get changed. But other than that, all other modes, you can switch them on the fly. Even while you're driving, you can just turn the dial and it will change.
Is it a 4x4?
By default, there's no 2x4 in this. It's always on 4x4. Reverse, neutral and drive modes here. You have a button right towards the right of the dial, so you kind of, just press it and you can move it. Again, feels very solid, doesn't feel cheap at all, doesn't feel like it's going to age poorly. And of course, you have the parking buttons every time you are kind of, parking the car. There is a manual mode which you can switch the car to. You will just kind of press this button and turn the knob to the right. The manual mode lets you use the paddle shifters and kind of do a little bit of advanced sport mode, but it's never really going to be true manual, because you still have to maintain those RPM conditions to upshift and downshift. If you're doing it too frequently, it will give you a prompt saying that gear change conditions not met or something like that. So not a true manual mode, but yeah, gets close to it. Never really used it too much, right? But it's good
RPM condition thoda explain.
If you are kind of still driving very slow and RPM is low and you try to upshift, it will not let you upshift at all. Right? It will just kind of stay in first gear or second gear only. So only when the car picks up the speed, it lets you upshift. So not really a true manual mode, right? I mean, because on a manual car, you would maybe the car stalls, but you will still get to change the gears.
Upshift, you'll have to do it manually. Does the downshift happen automatically?
It does. In manual, I'll have to kind of try it again, because I have not driven more than a kilometer in this mode. But as far as I remember, the downshift does happen automatically, and upshift doesn't happen automatically. You have to keep using the paddle shifter. Driving I've thoroughly loved it, right? If somebody asked me to describe it in one word, I would just call it lovely, amazing, and all those adjectives. Again, for me, the reference point was a very, very small, sub 4 meter, different class. If I talk about the pickup and the zippiness, not very zippy, especially in auto mode. Sport mode will still keep you, satiated. It is not very quick off the block, as I said earlier. Does 0 to 100 in about 13 seconds or 13.5 seconds. Slightly just edges out the Fortuner and the Endeavour in on-road tests. I'm not somebody who enjoys driving fast or wants to race, and you buy a SUV this size, you're not really buying it to race anyway. There is a turbo lag till about 1800, 2000 RPM. Right?
What do you mean by that?
So what that means is, as you're accelerating, there are actually times when people in the car have seen that why is the car laboring so much, right? It's making a little bit more than usual noise. So till about 2000 RPM, you will feel that the car is struggling. You may be able to hear this noise, but once you cross 2000 RPM, it is very, very zippy, right? It turns into almost a different car, or a 1.5x version of this car. Long drives, I think a good part is that driver fatigue is minimal. Prior to buying this car, I used to hate driving. My last car, I had it for 8 years. It only had 40,000 kilometers on it. So that should tell you that I'm not really fond of driving in particular. I always prefer taking a cab wherever I want to go. But since I've got it, it makes me want to drive it. So I've done about 400-500 kilometers at a stretch, which for me is a big deal, because again, as I said, about 4 months ago, I used to hate driving. And the good part is you don't feel the fatigue. It's because of the overall suspension, the comfort of the chair, the lack of cabin noise. Cooling is great. 140 is what I've taken it to. It feels very, very planted.
Even such a tall car?
Even such a tall car. Surprisingly, you don't really realize it's at 140, but The minute I crossed it, I kind of felt that okay, now I feel I am going too fast.
What made you say that?
I don't know. It's just a feeling. I think it's just it started moving a little bit, and it was on a highway. It was on an empty road, so it was no issue in terms of low risk. Till about 100, you don't even realize it's going fast. It's very quiet, and as I said, the roll is very. It's quite reduced compared to Fortuner and Endeavour. The 140 also I went to because I wanted to see how easily it goes there, and I am very sure 160, 170 would have been comfortable, and somebody who's used to driving at high speed would not have had an issue. I think it also had to do with the fact that I'm not very accustomed to driving consistently at those speeds, so that's why I slowed down. But it didn't. I mean, it's not like it drastically felt unstable or anything.
Any emergency braking experience?
3 months back when I had got the car, I was getting used to driving it. So again, it was a quick revelation that it will take longer to come to a halt. So you can't be casual about braking. And just a reference point, right? The minute I drive my older car, I am just kind of almost getting thrown ahead because I'm used to now braking harder, and that one kind of just immediately stops. So again, some of it has to do with the difference in size. This one is 3 times the weight, so of course will take a little bit more time to get used to.
Probably 1.5 times length.
Yeah, but I do feel at least the pedal, the brake should get engaged a little quicker than it is getting engaged. I think you have to press it almost half the way through for it to start engaging, and that's an area where I think I can fix it. Let's see.
What is the service guys telling you?
They're saying that there's nothing wrong. They're saying it's absolutely fine. That's how it's calibrated perfectly, so there's no issue. Suspension is smooth. It kind of tends to swallow up any sort of irregularities on the road. The NVH levels are pretty good, especially after crossing that minimum RPM threshold. The turbo kind of kicks in, it becomes even quieter. Vibration, barely anything, at least that's what I can feel. The body roll also, people in the second row and the third row haven't really complained of it, unless I've really not really taken them off a hump without minding it. The maneuverability is fantastic. I think that's got a lot to do with how light the steering is. I know some folks will say that no, the steering has to have more feedback. It's lighter than the small car that I was driving before this. It's very easy to maneuver through the city, wherever you're going. Very easy to kind of take around U-turns. So that's been something that's kind of helped me get used to it quicker. One area where I feel that things that they could have done better. In my list, the number 1 point would be the braking. Right? A lot has to do with the weight of the car and the fact that it will obviously take a little bit longer to come to a complete halt. But for the first service when it went, I actually had to tell them to check the braking because I thought there's something genuinely wrong with it. Because it takes a little bit of an effort to really, for it to really kick in. There was no learning curve in terms of maneuvering it, turning it, and getting used to the size. The little bit of learning curve that I had to get, adjusted to was the time it takes to come to a complete halt or even slow down. And initially on highway driving, there were a couple of close scenarios where I realized that I'll have to really start braking sooner. Because you can't really wait and then brake. You have to be a little proactive and preemptive in terms of ensuring that you are slowing the car down. That is a scary thing, and that's where I say that I'm hoping that I never have to use that automatic emergency braking, whatever that's called, AEB. Yeah. But at slow speeds it's fine, but the minute you are over 40, 50, you do realize that the braking isn't the best. If you like this review, if this was helpful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you think there's any feature which I've not spoken about, or which I've any inaccurate description, please leave a comment down below. I'll definitely be referring to the comments to see what more I can learn about this car. But it's been great. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much for giving your time. Thank you so much.